My name is Rebecca Pappas. I'm 29, and I've always been the kind of woman who keeps her life orderly. Files labeled, thoughts compartmentalized, problems handled quietly and efficiently. I work in IT, where logic is a refuge. When something breaks, you don't panic. You don't slam the keyboard or curse the screen. You slow down, isolate the issue, trace it to the source, and fix it. That's why what happened still feels unreal, like a system failure that shouldn't be possible, like I woke up inside someone else's nightmare and couldn't find the command to exit. It's been a few weeks since everything detonated. I know, logically, that I made the right decision. I know I protected myself. And yet, some nights, I still find my eyes drifting to the same patch of wall in the living room where it all happened, feeling that sharp, icy disbelief crawl back into my chest, as if it never left. I was engaged to Ethan Caldwell. 4 years together. 4 years of habits that turned into muscle memory. Sunday grocery trips. Late-night takeout eaten straight from the container. Private jokes that made no sense to anyone else. The way he'd reach for my hand in crowded places without thinking, like it was instinct, like we were tethered. Ethan was magnetic, a marketing guy with confidence to spare, charming in a way that opened doors. He could talk his way into a VIP section without a wristband and walk out with new contacts and a free drink. When I first met him, that energy felt warm, exciting. I liked how he pulled me out of my head and into the moment. He liked that I was calm and steady, grounded, he used to say, like I was an anchor. For a long time, he sounded proud of carrying it. Somewhere along the way, that anchor became something he resented, something he treated like dead weight. The warning signs were subtle at first, not the kind that send you running, the kind you excuse because you're in love, like the dinner with my coworkers where I wore a navy blouse and tailored slacks, simple and professional. Ethan looked me up and down, laughed, and said loudly enough for the table to hear, "Babe, you look like you're headed to an audit." Everyone laughed. My face burned. I laughed too, because when someone you love turns you into the punchline, laughing feels easier than making it awkward. Or the way he always chose where we ate. If I suggested something quieter or cheaper, he'd sigh and say, "Sure, Rebecca, if you want date night to feel like a cafeteria." I told myself he was just particular. I told myself I wasn't dramatic. I hate conflict, so I compromised. I let things slide. But eventually, compromise stopped feeling mutual. It started feeling like a one-way adjustment where I was the only one bending. 4 years later, we were engaged and deep in wedding planning. Wedding planning doesn't just add stress. It exposes people. It strips away the parts they usually keep hidden. Ethan wanted a wedding that looked curated for social media. Over 200 guests, a massive venue, floral installations that looked like art exhibits, signature cocktails named after us like we were a brand. He wanted spectacle, something cinematic. I wanted something smaller, more contained, something we could afford without draining our savings. We were stable, yes, but not wealthy. I didn't want to start a marriage buried under debt that sat on your chest like a stone. Every time I brought up budget, he reacted like I'd insulted him personally. "You're treating this like a business deal," he'd snap. "This is our wedding. It's supposed to be the most important day of our lives." I wasn't against the wedding. I just wanted us to be realistic. That word, realistic, set him off every time. One afternoon, we spent nearly 2 hours with the florist arguing over centerpiece shades, microscopic differences no one would ever notice. Ethan argued relentlessly, charming and persistent, until the florist nodded along like she was negotiating under duress. When I finally said maybe we could simplify things, he turned on me like I'd betrayed him. "If you're not going to take this seriously, why are you even here?" I'd left work early for that appointment, skipped a meeting, rushed through traffic, and somehow I was still the problem. It stopped being about compromise. It became about control. The night everything ended, our living room looked like chaos made physical. Papers everywhere, contracts, guest lists, budget spreadsheets, sticky notes plastered on the walls like we were solving a crime. Ethan had assembled a massive binder with color-coded tabs. He'd been obsessing over it for months, like it was the only thing keeping him upright. He paced in front of the coffee table, voice climbing as he ranted about the guest list. We have to invite my dad's cousins, all of them, and their kids and their plus ones. I sat on the couch, watching him spin himself into a storm. When I spoke, I chose my words carefully. Do we really need to invite people we barely know? Shouldn't this be about the people closest to us? He stopped mid-step and turned slowly, eyes sharp. Why don't you take this seriously, Rebecca? My stomach tightened. I do, but the wedding isn't what makes the marriage. We can't afford to invite half the state. He laughed, short and bitter. Realistic. You mean cheap. That's not what I mean. I don't want us drowning in debt just to impress people we don't even talk to. His face flushed. You always do this. You make me feel ridiculous for wanting something beautiful. I stood up, frustration finally breaking through my calm. Don't twist my words. I want it beautiful too. I just want it to be ours, not a performance. His hands clenched at his sides. He was shaking, not with fear but with anger he tried to pass off as caution. You never hear me. You never actually hear me. For a split second, his voice cracked, and I thought maybe this was where it softened, where we stepped back. I opened my mouth, and then his hand moved. Fast, hard, no hesitation. The slap cracked across my face, loud and final. The room went silent inside my head. My cheek burned, but the shock drowned out the pain. I stood there, staring at the man I was supposed to marry, the ring heavy on my finger, my brain refusing to process what had just happened. His face shifted from rage to horror. Rebecca, he whispered, I didn't mean to. I wasn't thinking. I didn't answer right away. My heart wasn't panicking, it was warning me. Looking back, it didn't come out of nowhere. He'd always been skilled with verbal cuts, with escalating arguments until I backed down, with teaching me that peace was something I earned by staying quiet. Physical violence was just the line I never believed he'd cross. When he did, something locked into place. I touched my cheek, not to check the damage, but to ground myself. Then I looked at him. Pack your things. The calm in my voice surprised me. He stared. What? No, wait, stop. I don't care what excuse you have. You put your hands on me. He cried, frantic and messy. Stress, pressure, everything. Please. There's nothing to explain. You crossed a line I will never tolerate. When he stepped closer, I stepped back. Pack and go. 15 minutes later, he left with a bag, hands shaking, eyes searching for my face for the softness he was used to. It wasn't there. When the door closed, the silence felt heavy and unnatural. The wedding binder sat open like a cruel joke. 4 years ended in 15 minutes. I wasn't angry anymore. I was clear. And that clarity came with one cold thought I couldn't shake. Ethan hadn't lost control. He'd been trying to take mine. The next morning, my phone vibrated nonstop. Missed calls, messages, notifications stacked like warnings. For a second, I thought something terrible had happened to someone else. Then I remembered. The slap, the door, the quiet. I stared at my phone, cheek still sore. I didn't read Ethan's messages. I knew what they'd say. I called my parents first. My mom answered cheerfully, asking about cake flavors. There is no cake, there is no wedding. Silence. I told her the only part that mattered. He put his hands on me. Her reaction was immediate, protective. I did the right thing, I said aloud, because I needed to hear it. You absolutely did. After we hung up, I felt lighter, just enough to move on to the next task, canceling the wedding. Calling vendors is its own kind of emotional torture. Everyone is polite, sympathetic, careful not to say the wrong thing. I'm so sorry to hear that, the venue coordinator said. We'll need to talk about the deposit. Keep it, I replied without hesitation. I don't want it back. The photographer, the caterer, the DJ, each call peeled off another layer of the life I'd planned, and by the time I was done, I felt wrung out. Empty, but also strangely relieved. That's when the texts from Ethan started coming in. At first, they were apologetic. Long paragraphs, too many words, too many excuses. I wasn't thinking, I lost control, the stress got to me, I would never hurt you. Then the tone shifted. You're really throwing everything away over one mistake? 4 years, Rebecca, 4 years. You're being dramatic. By the end of the day, the guilt tripping kicked in. Everyone's asking what happened. You're ruining my life. How am I supposed to explain this? I didn't respond to a single message. What was there to say? He knew exactly what he'd done. The next wave came from friends. Some were solid. My friend Maya came over that evening with takeout and zero questions, just sat next to me on the couch like a silent anchor. Others called to check in, their voices heavy with curiosity they tried and failed to disguise as concern. And then there were the ones who chose sides. Ethan's friend group had always orbited around him, but I hadn't expected the speed at which the narrative flipped. By the third day, I started seeing vague posts on social media. Some people can't handle a passionate partner. Funny how stress is only an excuse when it benefits one side. Imagine throwing away a future because you can't control your emotions. No names, no tags, but it was obvious. The loudest voice belonged to Sophie, Ethan's female friend, the one he'd always insisted was basically a sister, the one who hugged him a little too long and laughed a little too hard at his jokes. She posted things like, "Strong men get punished for having feelings, and not everyone is built for real commitment." I stared at my screen, thumb hovering over the reply button. Then I locked my phone and set it down. Engaging would only give her what she wanted. What bothered me more than the posts was how coordinated it felt, like a script everyone had agreed on without me. Ethan was stressed, Ethan was overwhelmed, Ethan was the victim of a woman who overreacted. No one mentioned the slap, no one asked if I was okay. Ethan's parents called on the fourth day. His mother cried, said he'd been under so much pressure, that he loved me, that he'd made a mistake. I told her calmly, "I'm not marrying someone who thinks violence is acceptable." She didn't argue after that, just sighed and said she understood, even if I could hear the disappointment lingering underneath. His father's call was colder. "People are talking, Rebecca," he said. "This is going to follow you." "I'm more concerned with my safety than my reputation," I replied. He hung up shortly after. By the end of the week, I was exhausted in a way sleep didn't fix. Not heartbroken, just drained. Carrying everyone else's opinions felt heavier than the breakup itself. Then the rumors escalated. Someone, most likely Sophie, started suggesting I'd exaggerated what happened, that Ethan had raised his hand defensively, that I'd pushed his buttons. A mutual acquaintance texted, "You didn't really kick him out over one argument, did you?" I deleted the message without replying. Despite all the noise, the house felt peaceful. No tension, no walking on eggshells, no bracing myself before speaking. And yet, something about Ethan's reaction didn't sit right with me. He wasn't acting like someone who'd lost control and regretted it. He was acting like someone angry his plan hadn't worked. The way he shifted from apology to blame so fast, the way he focused more on how I reacted than on what he did, the way he seemed obsessed with controlling the narrative. It didn't feel like guilt, it felt like panic. That thought stayed with me, scratching at the back of my mind, until Lena called. Lena is one of those people who always knows more than she says, blunt, honest, not interested in drama unless it's unavoidable. Her voice on the phone was hesitant, which immediately put me on edge. "Rebecca," she said, "are you free to talk?" "Yeah," I replied slowly. "What's up?" She paused. "Not over the phone. Can we meet?" My stomach tightened. We met at a small cafe downtown, the kind of place that smells like burnt espresso and old books. Lena was already there, sitting in a corner booth, coffee untouched in front of her. She looked uncomfortable. That's when I knew this wasn't about comfort or support. This was about information. I slid into the seat across from her. "Okay," I said. "What is it?" She exhaled. "I didn't want to get involved, but after everything that's being said about you, I can't stay quiet." My hands curled around my mug. "Say it." "It's about Ethan," she said, "and Sophie." My chest tightened. "What about them?" Lena lowered her voice. "A friend of mine saw them together at a bar weeks ago." I didn't speak. "They weren't just talking," she continued. "They were holding hands, kissing." The cafe noise faded into a dull hum. I felt strangely calm, like the last piece of a puzzle had just snapped into place. Lena reached into her bag. She took a photo. She didn't want to cause drama, but after what you went through, she slid her phone across the table. The image was grainy, blurry, but unmistakable. Ethan's arm around Sophie's waist, her hand flat against his chest, their faces close enough to erase any doubt. I stared at it for a long moment. Then I pushed the phone back. "That explains everything," I said quietly. Lena blinked. "You're not angry?" "Oh, I am," I replied, just not surprised. Because suddenly it all made sense. The picking fights, the pressure, the slap. He hadn't lost control. He'd been cornered by his own lies. And that meant the story wasn't over yet. Not even close. I stayed at that cafe long after Lena left. My coffee went cold. The chatter around me blurred into background noise. I kept replaying the image in my head. Not the image itself, but everything it explained. The tension, the sudden irritability, the way Ethan had seemed almost desperate for an argument that night. I wasn't dealing with a man who lost control and regretted it. I was dealing with a man who had already stepped outside the relationship and needed a reason to make me the villain. The slap hadn't been random, it had been a shortcut. I drove home slowly, gripping the steering wheel harder than necessary. Not because I was angry, but because I was focused, clear in a way I hadn't been in weeks. I didn't cry, I didn't scream, I planned. I wasn't going to confront him immediately. I wanted to see how far he'd go if I stayed silent, how long he'd keep rewriting the story if he thought I didn't know the truth. It didn't take long. His texts ramped up again. Less apologetic now, more confident. "We should talk like adults. This is getting blown way out of proportion. I don't know what Sophie's been telling people, but she's just trying to help." That one almost made me laugh. By the third day, I was ready. I texted him one line: "We need to talk. Come by tomorrow at 7. He replied within seconds: "I knew you'd calm down. Thank you. We can fix this." I didn't answer. The next evening, I cleared the living room. No clutter, no wedding papers, just the coffee table wiped clean. Except for one thing: a printed photo. I placed it dead center, perfectly aligned, like evidence in a courtroom. At exactly 7 p.m., there was a knock. When I opened the door, Ethan stood there holding a bouquet of flowers I recognized immediately, the kind I'd once mentioned liking in passing years ago. He smiled, like he was stepping back into familiar territory. "You look good," he said. "I'm glad you reached out." I stepped aside without responding. He walked in confidently, stopping short when he saw the coffee table. "What's this?" he asked, picking up the photo. The color drained from his face. "Where did you get this?" he demanded. I leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "Does it matter?" His jaw tightened. "This isn't what it looks like." I waited. Silence stretched between us, thick and uncomfortable. "Sophie is just a friend," he said finally. "Someone must have misunderstood." I tilted my head. "Then explain it." His eyes flicked back to the photo. He swallowed. "I was overwhelmed," he said. "The wedding, the pressure, you were pulling away." "So you cheated," I replied calmly. He bristled. "It wasn't cheating." I pushed off the wall and took a step closer. "You were engaged. You were kissing another woman. What do you call that?" His voice rose. "I didn't plan for it to happen." "But it did," I said. "And instead of owning it, you picked fights, you pushed, you escalated until I became the problem." He scoffed. "You're twisting things." "No," I said softly. "I'm finally seeing them clearly." He ran a hand through his hair, frustration bleeding through his charm. "You weren't perfect either, Rebecca. You were cold, always talking about budgets like feelings don't matter." "And that justified lying?" I asked, "sneaking around, slapping me?" The word slapping landed hard. He froze. "I didn't mean to." "But you did," I cut in, "and now I know why." He stared at me, expression tightening. "Why?" "Because you wanted me to explode," I said. "You wanted me to scream, to hit back, to do something you could point to and say, 'See, she's unstable.'" His silence answered for him. "You needed an exit," I continued. one where you weren't the bad guy, and when I didn't give it to you, you lost control." His shoulders slumped slightly. "I messed up," he said quietly. "I know I did, but we can fix this." I shook my head. "Fix what?" "The trust, the relationship." "You can't fix something you didn't respect in the first place," I said. "This isn't a mistake, this is a pattern." His frustration snapped back. "So that's it? You're throwing away 4 years over this?" I met his eyes, steady and unmoved. "No, you threw it away. I just stopped carrying it." He stepped toward me, reaching out instinctively. I stepped back. "Don't," I said. He stopped, his face crumpling. "I'm sorry." I nodded once. "Good. Now leave." He hesitated, then grabbed his jacket, his confidence completely gone. At the door, he turned back. "You didn't have to do it this way." "Yes," I said quietly. "I did." The door closed behind him, and this time there was no doubt. I hadn't just ended an engagement, I'd escaped something much worse. And karma? Karma was already warming up. The weeks after Ethan walked out of my life felt strangely quiet. Not empty, quiet. The house settled into a rhythm that didn't revolve around anticipating someone else's moods. I woke up when I wanted, ate when I wanted, spoke without calculating how my words might be twisted into an argument. The silence wasn't lonely, it was peaceful. I threw myself back into work. Late-night debugging sessions, morning runs, dinners with friends I hadn't seen enough of while planning a wedding that never should have happened. Little by little, I started feeling like myself again. Not the version of me that constantly compromised, but the one who trusted her instincts. I hadn't heard much about Ethan, and I wasn't looking, but the universe has a way of delivering updates whether you ask for them or not. It was Maya who called first, her voice barely holding back laughter. "You're not going to believe this," she said. "What?" I asked, already bracing myself. "He moved in with Sophie." I paused. "That was fast." "Wait," she continued, "it gets better." Apparently, Ethan and Sophie had gone public almost immediately. Social media posts, smiling photos, captions about finally choosing happiness and toxic relationships being left behind. The same people who'd questioned my boundaries suddenly went quiet. And then, almost on cue, the whole thing imploded. Ethan didn't just get cheated on, he got cheated on loudly. Sophie had been seeing someone else from her gym for weeks. Ethan found out the hard way by walking in on them. According to Maya, the confrontation ended with Sophie's bags tossed onto the lawn and a neighbor filming the entire thing. The video made its rounds online. I watched it once. Ethan stood there red-faced, yelling, while Sophie cried and begged. It was messy, public, humiliating. I didn't feel satisfaction the way I expected to. I felt confirmation. That chaos, that pattern of self-destruction, it hadn't started with me. People started reaching out again. Apologies this time. Awkward messages that danced around accountability. "I guess we didn't know the whole story. You were right to leave." I kept my responses brief. "I'm doing well. Hope you are too." That was the truth. Months passed. Life moved forward. Then one night, almost 10 months after the slap, there was a knock on my door. It was late, close to 10 p.m. I opened it and found Ethan standing there. He looked different, thinner, tired, hair unkempt, eyes rimmed red, like sleep hadn't been a priority in a long time. The confident man who once filled every room had shrunk into someone barely holding himself together. "Rebecca," he said quietly, "please, I just need to talk." "No," I replied, already stepping back. He caught the doorframe. "Please, just a minute." Against my better judgment, I listened. He told me about therapy, about realizing his mistakes, about losing everything, about how Sophie was gone, about how he finally understood what he'd done to me. "I've changed," he said, tears spilling over. "I swear I have." I studied him carefully. This wasn't remorse, this was loneliness. "Ethan," I said calmly, "I don't doubt you're struggling, But change isn't something you announce when you're desperate. It's something you prove over time away from the person you hurt. He sank back defeated. I don't have anyone else. I met his eyes, steady and unmoved. That's not my responsibility. He nodded slowly, finally understanding there was no opening left to force. I'm sorry, he whispered. I nodded once. Good. Then I closed the door, and that was it. No dramatic reconciliation, no last kiss, no second chance. Just a woman choosing herself without guilt, without hesitation. Because self-respect is not negotiable, and once someone shows you who they really are, you don't wait around hoping they'll become someone else.